Hello and welcome to Hable Talks, the podcast about people and tech. My name's Mark Reynolds and I'm joined as ever by my co-host, Sean O'Shea.
Hello, Mr. Reynolds.
Sean.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm delighted you're back from Dubai, Mark. I've missed you deeply. So it's lovely to have you back with us. Because at one stage we didn't know if you were coming back, did we?
No, that's right. So I was in Dubai for 3.5 weeks. Full transparency, we did actually attempt to record this podcast while I was in Dubai, but for a whole bunch of technical reasons that wasn't a success. But it's great to be back, and we're really lucky that Dan Bradbury from the Woodland Trust, who we'll introduce in a minute, has agreed to come on a second time after that slightly kind of failed attempt first up. So yeah, it's good to be back. Good to be back in the UK, and thanks to all the viewers and the listeners who've given us great feedback about our last episode of Hable Talks, by the way. So we're building kind of more subscribers as we go. So if you're not subscribing already, please do. And thanks for your support so far. So today we're joined by Dan Bradbury from the Woodland Trust. Hopefully you've already seen on our socials, we've been partnering with them for a while. So Dan, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. It's nice to see you again. You know, after the first time I enjoyed it so much, I thought I would definitely come back. Jumped at the chance. So, but yeah, good to see you back.
Very good.
It's all an excuse, Dan. We do this so that we just get people to talk to us.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it actually worked fine the first time.
Well, as you asked most of my team, apparently I like the sound of my own voice, so it's no problem. More than happy to be here.
Very good, very good. So I think let's start off, Dan, if you don't mind, just by introducing yourself a little bit and telling people who the Woodland Trust are and a bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Dan. I'm the Director of Communications and Development at Woodland Trust. Probably the world's longest job title. But my role is managing the comms team and the kind of first line of contact with potential donors. So about bringing funds in to carry out conservation work. As an organisation, as by the name, we're kind of a global organisation, but we're a small team based in the UK. And our main emphasis and the main idea behind our organisation is about protecting land. So land being that most important element of any conservation project. So, you know, if you want to save a species, or you want to protect the climate, or you want to lock in storing carbon, then land is how we do that. So we're not saying that the other ways aren't beneficial as well, but our approach is that. So we feel it kind of has this holistic approach. You know, it kind of captures everything that we want to do within a project.
And just in case people make the same mistake that I had to admit I did the first time, it's the Woodland Trust, which is different to the Woodland Trust,
yes,
which is a UK-based charity, right?
Oh yeah, so people get us mixed up all the time, and I've been at events where one company was sporting both organisations, and even the guests at the event were kind of confused as to who we were. But no, we actually work, we get on well with those guys, we work close to those guys, and, you know, if people contact us about UK projects, we have no problems with pointing them in their direction, and the same has happened in reverse. So, but we have been confused. I've even stood up to do talks and been introduced to somebody from the Woodland Trust. So, you know, it's a common thing.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we get that right. We promise.
Yeah.
So quick kind of backstory from Hable's side in how we found you. Last Christmas, we decided to send some Christmas cards and some thank you gifts to our friends at Microsoft, and we did send them booze, but we also bought them a tree. And that was an idea that we had. We hadn't really done anything from a kind of corporate social responsibility point of view before. And we did a lot of research, and we asked our staff about the types of charities they'd want us to support. And we did look at tree planting schemes in the UK, which is where the Woodland Trust probably was one option. But we felt very passionately about the land purchase side of what you do, and also the conservation. So I think if we go through today, it would be great to talk about the kind of three main ways that Hable work with the Woodland Trust. We're going to cover land purchase. We are going to talk a bit about tree planting, but also about employing rangers and what that role means.
Yep.
So if we maybe start there, so let's compare it to, for example, tree planting, our second topic. Why is land purchase so important, and whereabouts in the world do you purchase land?
So we purchased land. So we're now in, I think it's 26 countries. So we have around 30 partners. And that kind of goes from Malaysian Borneo through India, Africa, Armenia, but a lot in Central and South America. And the reason we take the approach that we do is for several reasons. One, because if you protect that habitat, it protects everything that's in it, as I mentioned earlier. So that can be the grasses, the plants, the small insects, all the way up to those apex predators. So it provides a habitat for all of that biodiversity, and a lot of that is under threat purely from land clearance. And that land clearance can be from large-scale agriculture, it can be from illegal logging, but there are also, threats through habitat loss because of urban spread, all of those kind of things. So you protect that land, it protects that land for biodiversity. But also, what that land generally has is mature trees in lots of our project areas, and those trees are doing what we want to do in the future from tree planting. So it's kind of absorbing carbon, locking in carbon, and storing that in the ground. So if you cut down those trees, that carbon is released and is not capturing it. So what we want to do is maintain that habitat. But also, with every single one of our projects, they're managed by local people and local organisations. So what it also does, it has also these benefits for communities as well. So we work very closely with locals, and in some places actually what it is around legislation to protect these areas around community reserves. So in places like Tanzania, where we've just done some fundraising, the local people, the local villagers actually own the reserves, they own the land, but they're managing it in a way that's beneficial for biodiversity, so the conservation side of things, but also beneficial to them as a community. So that's why we take that approach, because we think it's really, it's the right way to do things.
Yeah, and that was a light bulb for us when Sean and I were first talking about it, was that we thought, planting a tree was maybe the best thing that we could do if we wanted to, in our small way, help. But actually stopping trees being cut down in the first place trumps that, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've, as an organisation, we've planted over 2 million trees. So we're not saying that tree planting is a bad thing to do. Actually, what we're saying is it's a great thing to do alongside the other activities. So, I think we worked out basically the impact that we could have with a standing forest now. It'd probably take around about 10, 15 years for a tree to mature to get to that point. So for us, tree planting is really important. But as a report that kind of was produced by Q a few months back, it said the 12 golden rules of tree planting: protect what's there. We can talk about planting 500,000 trees in the next year or whatever. But ultimately, 4 or 5 times of that will already been cut down. So actually there's a negative benefit to that. So let's protect what's there and then start filling back up with more trees as well. So let's regenerate through that. So that's our approach to it. So we're not saying it's a bad thing, but we're just saying it's one mechanism towards conservation.
Yeah. So Sean, maybe you can talk a little bit about the different ways that we raise money corporately for the Woodland Trust. But first, do you just want to tell people about dressing up as a tree and climbing through 10 kilometres of mud?
No, I don't want to do that bit. So yes, I'll happily do that bit. Thank you, Mark. So there are 3 ways in which Hable are supporting this, and it's been really good actually, because as Mark said, when we first got in touch with you, Dan, it was because we put out to Hable, the people of Hable, we'd like to support some causes. What are your ideas? And it was such an overwhelming level of enthusiasm for sustainability of the environment as a topic. Certainly the younger people in Hable, it was overwhelmingly such a positive reaction to something like that. So it's just good, because you hear anecdotally, don't you, that younger generations are growing up with more of a sense of purpose and interest and passion for the environment, and we saw that coming through this exercise that we did in Hable. But yeah, there are 3 things that we do, one of which did involve me dressing up as a tree. So the first thing that we do is every time we sell a learning day, or a customer buys a learning day from Hable where we're training them on their people on new ways of working, then we donate money to plant a tree for that. Then we ask for feedback. So one of the ways that we get better as a company is we learn from our customers and the people that we're training. So we need surveys, but obviously surveys are not always the most popular thing for people to spend time on. So we incentivize that by saying, look, if you fill in this survey, which helps us get better and provide a better service, then we will donate money towards the land conservation for the World Land Trust. And that really helps, I guess, tap into that sense of, that the people are doing something good by A, helping us get better, and B, doing something for the environment. The third part then that you mentioned was where you deploy that kind of local ranger to look after that area. And for us in Hable, that relies on us generating donations. And that has, at the moment, revolved around me being a tree and considering doing the wolf run in a tree outfit. But once I attempted my first lunge in the car park and realised that my gait was about 30 centimetres, I thought, no, that's not a likely.
Was there anyone doing the wolf run in fancy dress? Or
no.
would it be just you?
No,
Is that
so
not a thing?
feel free to go and look on the videos online, but there is literally nobody doing it in fancy dress. So okay. I put it on, took a photo, sent it to Dan, took it off, and then did the wolf run. That was my...
it was a lofty ambition, mate, anyway. You did well for trying.
It was. And I'm glad we didn't tell the story about the little girl getting upset because I wasn't actually stickman. So thanks for not putting that one on me anyway.
Brilliant. So, Dan, do you want to tell us a bit more about the pot of money that we're trying to raise funds for to employ local people to look after some of the land that gets purchased? Maybe tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so just going back to what Sean was saying, I'm not talking about a tree or the stickman part, but for us, it's kind of Hable are taking, for us, like almost the perfect approach. So what they're doing is they're kind of covering off land purchase, which is, that primary thing we talked about, your tree planting. But this third part about employing local people, employing rangers, is huge. And this is something that's actually quite difficult for us to fundraise for, if we're being completely frank and honest here. But they are core. They're key to what happens in these projects. These are the people on the front line. These are the people on the ground who are doing that work. And for us, it's hugely important that we provide the funding to our partners to employ these people, because like anywhere in the world, you provide someone with an opportunity, then they will engage with a project. These are guys are from the local communities, the local grounds. As an example, I think I might have told you this story before, but there's one guy who was in Colombia. He used to be a hunter, he used to be in the forest. He used to go take things to market to feed his family, to earn money. Whereas actually he could see the forest disappearing, and he could see the species that he'd seen as a kid vanishing, and he found this quite a distressing thing to see. So actually he ended up talking with our partners, and our partner said, well, actually there's something different you can do. And now what he does is he works as a guide, so in the forest. So where previously he was mimicking bird call to get birds to come down and capture them, take them to market, he now mimics those bird calls. If birds come down, and there's people with big telephoto lenses who have spent thousands of pounds to be there to take a photograph of this rare bird. So it's about creating that kind of circular economy within the organisation. But some of the things that they go through, and here, especially in the last kind of 12 months with everything that's happened with the pandemic, we're all a bit fed up with what's been going on. But some of the things that they've been dealing with in South America are just incredible, but they're so passionate and they care so much about it. We've got a group of guys in Venezuela who basically they protect the nests of the golden-fronted parrots, which are these green parrots which are taken off for the pet trade. Well, when they discovered that obviously they're going to be locked in due to lockdowns and things like that, they actually decided what they were going to do was just going to go off and create a bubble of just them to protect the nests, not see their families, because they weren't allowed to go back and forth because of COVID, and they stayed there and protected these nests, And these are guys who have, in the past, have been held up at knife point. They're all unarmed. They're local people. They're earning a minimum salary, but they're so passionate about what we're doing. Now, we couldn't do without them. They're the eyes and the ears on the ground, So them working with the camera traps, they're the ones who ensure that things are working properly.
Yeah, and I suppose that local knowledge you couldn't get as an international charity providing people to go there and do that. That has to be employing local people, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So we very much believe or we don't believe in this green colonialism. We don't believe in actually putting our own people into these projects. All of our projects we fund local organisations. So these are local organisations, local to that area, who understand all of the politics, they understand all of the issues, all of those intricacies that we could just never understand. But also, from the flip side of it, is that if a group of outsiders come in, actually, the costs increase, and actually it makes it very difficult for all organisations to work in those regions. So for us, it's really important that we have really good, really strong partners, and some of those we've been working with since the very inception of World Land Trust. They've been going back 32 years, I think it is now, 33 years. So, these are long relationships.
And to our standards in the UK, the salary for a year isn't too great. If you're considering doing some fundraising as a company or even want to donate as an individual, we're not talking about a huge amount of money in our terms, are we, to employ one of these people annually? No,
what we'd say is on average it's around about £5,000 to cover the cost of the ranger for the year. So not very much at all. And so what we're doing is we're trying to develop that, and we're trying to do that with our partners to increase those salaries and kind of increase the well-being of those people. So that's something that's continually ongoing. So, especially with what they do.
Yeah, it's good to understand. What you mentioned, Dan, around that was I think you said it was a harder part to generate the money for. Is there any reason why that's been more difficult? Is it just a lack of awareness? Is it like some companies kind of say, well, we want to do something, let's plant trees, that's an obvious thing? Is it just
so I think there's a lot,
which absolutely is where we started, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's there's it doesn't really matter where you are or who you speak to. There's this kind of buzz around tree planting and that, and doing that. And like I say, it's an absolutely incredible thing to do. But ultimately, what lots of people want to see is they want to see that impact. So generally what we believe is that people want to kind of see the impact of buying and protecting land or planting trees so the forest appears, but it's that management. So it's that ongoing management and that protection of it. So for example, every tree that we put into the ground, it starts off with local people collecting seeds from the forest. They then plant those at the nursery. They then maintain those seedlings up until the point of maturity where they can be put out into the forest or into an area, and then what they do is they manage that and they establish those trees and they maintain those trees for about 5 to 10 years because they don't want those to die off. So so that's cost, but that needs people. So that's kind of rangers, and they need to protect that landscape as well to make sure forest isn't being cleared. But ultimately, if you're putting areas of land under protection, you need people to look after it. So generally we build into costs of any project. We add that, we build that into it. But actually what we know is actually the project's partners need more. They need more support and they need more people to manage it. So that's why we have our Rangers program. And when you start talking about people's salaries like we just have, people are kind of going, well, actually I want to protect land, but the salaries I don't really want to pay. It feels like they don't really want to pay somebody else's salary. Whereas actually what quite often is missed is actually that's a really important part, because that's one thing that makes it happen.
Yeah, and I think this is where having a partnership with a charity is so important. Again, I would never criticise companies who just donate for something that is visible and easy, if you like, which exactly what we did to start off with. Tree planting, 1 training day equals 1 tree. That's kind of easy. But what we've done is we've learnt from you, I think, over the last year or so about some of the, more subtle details in this and the things that actually make an impact, even if they're not so visible. So I'd encourage companies to think about that when they're partnering with charities rather than just donating. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And from a World Land Trust point of view, the other thing that's striking about with Hable is it feels like a relationship as well. So for us, what we want to do is, obviously we're very happy to receive donations and one-off donations and all of those and all of that supports these projects. But actually what we would rather do is build a relationship over a period of time, and hopefully that grows and that develops. But also it will help you guys really understand the impacts you've had, but also the people who work for you, and hopefully they then pass on that knowledge and pass on that experience, and they go and look at things in a slightly different way, and then that kind of progresses. So for us, having those relationships and those long-term relationships are really important things for us. But everybody has to start somewhere. And everybody has these different ways in and different routes in. And that's why we offer all of these different solutions to conservation. So whether it is land purchase, whether it is tree planting, whether it is the Keeps of the Wild program, the Buy an Acre, whether it is our carbon offsetting scheme, it's all of those kind of things. It's about providing people with solutions so they can find different ways in to having the impact that we all we know needs to happen.
Is it when you were talking about the partnerships there, and I think Mark and I think the rest of Hable, we've become a lot more educated and informed thanks to the partnership. But if companies are listening to this thinking, oh, that's a nice thing to do, but we already do other nice things, there are real commercial opportunities here as well. What I've learned as well is the other side of this, where actually by talking about how through forming partnerships with customers, they can be in turn having a benefit to the environment, makes us more attractive to work with. So we put in tender responses that the work they'll be doing with us will in turn lead to us donating to the World Land Trust, which is a nice message for them to think, actually, yeah, we're not only buying services from Hable, we're going to be making some impact on the environment. So it helps from that perspective. It also really helps in terms of your people and your company's sense of purpose, and it's certainly something that has generated a lot of interest and excitement because they know they're working for a company that cares about this stuff. And the last part that I think has been really nice, and I did benefit from myself, was to raise donations. You can do things like team building activities, throwing each other in mud, around a wolf run, all for the sense of, we're not just doing this as a team building exercise for the sake of it. We're doing this for a purpose. And so there's so many benefits to a company for thinking about this that when we got into it, I hadn't considered, Dan. These are all things that I've learned since we've had a partnership with you.
Yeah, I think my background's very different to conservation and the charity sector. So, and I'm a great believer that actually any relationship should be a two-way thing. So it shouldn't just be about, we don't want to be an organisation where we're just sat there taking a donation. So because actually that's not really right. So we want to make sure that the experience that you have as donors is a good one. So what we want you to do is we want to know that because you're doing the right things and you're genuine in your approach to this, is that actually, yes, you are benefiting from that. And we want to support that because actually, if it's successful and it's successful for you, then it's successful for us as well. We have to pick out those companies who are trying to do it for the one way and, that greenwashing thing, which is why, we would rather kind of start relationships small and build them up, is because we want to build that relationship where both parties benefit from that long term, So for example, the next time you did a wolf run, is we would make sure, and hopefully the guys in my team were kind of promoting the fact you were doing it and we're pushing that and supporting. But the next time you did one, there'd be nothing to stop somebody from the team, maybe not me, but someone may come and represent and help out, so and partake as well. So it's around everybody learning, because ultimately there's a lot of anxiety around climate. So we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. I think there is a feeling of, is this too much? Is it overwhelming? But what we want to try and do is we want to try and provide something that's tangible and and provide some solutions towards it, where people feel like they can do something, but it can also be tangible as well. So whether it is an acre you've protected or whether it is a tree you've planted, is this something really tangible that you've done? And that you can't help but feel good about that when you know the impact that's had on the local people or the local species, And I think that's what we're trying to do. So I'm kind of pleased that you're benefiting from it in other ways, and hopefully we'll continue to do that as we go forward.
Do you think, Dan, that COVID has changed the way that the environment is talked about and this topic is talked about? Has it? I think when there was the early stages of lockdown and we saw those kind of pictures, do you remember over China?
Yeah.
Where they showed the change in the kind of pollution levels and that really significant difference at that point. Do you think it's made it more of an agenda item for people? It's created a sense of awareness that, I don't know, wasn't maybe as available before?
Absolutely. So I think in the last whilst this pandemic has been happening, yes, I think it's We've seen a lot of changes. We've also got this COP26 coming up as well in Glasgow, where there's a lot of talk about the environment and climate. But what we think happened and what we believe and what we've seen with the lockdowns is people have suddenly gone, did you know what? I actually value being outdoors. I actually value that clean air. I value that quiet. Then, those quiet times, I value that space. So, and it's almost like people have suddenly gone, did you know what? That is really important to me. They've had a time to kind of stop, reflect, and go, actually, do you know what? I love being outdoors. So, and we feel that that's had a real benefit. But, with everything that's been going on in the media, so I started at World Land Trust 8.5 years ago. I couldn't find anything in the media about climate or anything, or if I could, it was kind of once a month maybe on the BBC environment page or something like that. But even now, like a few months back, even the Daily Express had a green front page. It's kind of everything. People seem to be becoming much more aware of it, and that can only benefit, and that can benefit. And I think it is from things like you were saying, those shots above China of the clouds vanishing once we'd stopped flying around, those silence. I think it's a combination of all of that. But I also wonder whether this is me being optimistic. By seeing those things, people have gone, actually, we probably can do something, and we can make a change. And that's what we want to be. We want to be that catalyst for change. What we don't want to do is go, the world is horrendous, nothing can happen. It's like, look, there's a lot of bad stuff happening, but actually, you can do something about it. If we collectively, we can do something. And that's what we do. So businesses, business like yourself, you're going to be put under more and more pressure from policy changes. You're going to be put under more and more pressure from consumers, by your own staff. So adopt it early, build it into your psyche, and really run with it. And it's not just about, funds for World Land Trust, but it will benefit you as a business in many different ways.
Do you think it took for the media to start using words like crisis and emergency? Even 5 years ago, maybe more people than 10 years ago talked about climate change, but now people talk about the climate crisis and climate emergency, just as a way of describing the situation. So I guess, how do you feel about those terms? And, did it need that to get the collective consciousness to kind of wake up a bit and do something?
So I think there's lots of arguments about that term and whether that term is the right thing. Is it too much? But ultimately, we've got a climate crisis, and that's getting to the point that it could be irreversible. That's a quote from Sir David Attenborough. One of our patrons, is that he quoted that. But we're also got a biodiversity crisis going on as well. But if we tackle one, it should hopefully help benefit the others as well. So, but ultimately, I think it has taken that. But it's taken the media actually to realise that there's an issue and actually buy into it and go, well, look, we do need to do something about this, and we need to raise that profile. And we've seen crazy things in the media. So we saw, the fires in the Amazon, how big they were in 2019. But whereas COVID, that kind of went quiet, but those fires were still burning. We've just had a fire in our project in Bolivia that was something crazy like 10 kilometres wide. This is a huge fire just running through because the landscape is so dry because of this, and the winds make this perfect storm because of climate change. So I think it's taken a combination of all of those things. The Arctic hitting, was it 30 degrees for the first time? Which is just crazy. This is the Arctic. The Arctic should not be above 30 degrees. And I think it's a combination of all of that. Really good TV programming. So, the Attenborough programs, which has reached millions of people, and people who probably weren't in that kind of echo chamber of the green world, saw these programs. There's these big pushes around things like the plastic issues. Everything's intrinsically linked, all of it. But ultimately, I think what people have seen is we need to do something. They're hearing more about it, and they want to do something about it now. And I think it's about organisations like World Land Trust not just telling about the problems, but it's also helping provide them with a solution because they want to do something. And I think for me, that's hugely important that we do that, because I wouldn't want World Land Trust to be that organisation who's going, well, look, we're in a climate crisis. it's terrible, the biodiversity crisis is terrible. Yes, they are, and people know that. But what we want to do is go, look, that is happening, but come on, collectively we can do something about it. Let's be positive and let's go down fighting if we need to go down fighting, if you want to use that phrase. If we sit back and do nothing, we've lost. So let's try. Let's do everything we can, and I think collectively we can do that with businesses like Hable and your staff getting involved. Even if it is doing a wolf run, half dressed as a tree or whatever, is that puts it into so many people's minds, not only them, but their family, their friends, and that wider thing. And that's the engagement. It's not just someone kind of telling them this is all really bad. It's like, why am I doing it? Well, I'm doing it because I'm raising funds for World Land Trust, who do this and do this, who are tackling this. And for us, that's just really powerful. That's money. I can't buy that. It's so outside.
So I hope you're both. I was going to say, I hope you both forgive me, but I realise I can't do an episode about climate change without giving my mum a shout. And I'll tell you why. For years, I've been probably mildly embarrassed when I was a teenager and I'd be in the marketplace in Abingdon in Oxfordshire, and my mum, who even then was running the Abingdon carbon cutters, would be desperately trying to get me and my brother and all my mates to think about and care about the environment. But now if I look at my kids, I've got teenage kids now, and through the things they hear in the media, but also through schools, it's something that they want to talk about. And that's, I think, been a huge change. So, hi, Mum, and sorry I didn't listen 20 years ago. But I think it's really good that now, whether it's because of the rhetoric in the media or just the, immediacy of where we're at as a planet, that everybody has to think about this. And she always said that one person can make a difference. That's the thing that always stuck in my mind. I was a little bit like, okay, is me recycling this thing really going to make a difference, Mum? She's like, yes, absolutely. And,
well, your mum sounds great.
Side of this, isn't it?
Yeah, your mum sounds great, and hi, Mark's mum. But that's always stuck with you. So you understand that, and you think back and go, okay, right. So this is she was right. This is what we now need to do. I think, but the other thing but on the flip side of it, yes, kids are learning about it, but we as a group, we need to be careful not to put too much pressure on them, because that's where we're seeing this climate anxiety. So I've got 12-year-old chins. I've got 12-year-old twins who
12-year-old chins.
Yeah, I've probably got about 5 chins. I've got about 5 chins, but no. But my twins, my daughter, she sits and she really, really worries about it. And it's like, well, look, we can do this. This is what we can do, and we're battling and we're trying, And she's now become the fiercest, most ardent recycler. Turn taps off, lights off. I'm constantly in trouble with her for something. So, but we need to be careful not to put that pressure on it. We need to do as much as we can, and I think collectively we can do that. And some people think I'm over optimistic, but for me, it's important that I am and that we are, because we need to try and do this. So yeah, anyway, sorry.
I really see that, Dan. I like the way you talked about that anxiety. My 4-year-old, who I find fascinating on an hourly basis, but he somehow, and we don't quite know what the influences are. I mean, obviously we talk about the environment and the importance of that and decisions and choices you can make, but he is very passionate about it. So he gets excited when he can throw something away and it goes into recycling. He's really disappointed if he has to put something in the whatever coloured bin, I can't remember now, but it's the recycling when he wants to put everything into. That's a really big deal for him. Turning lights off, all that kind of different stuff. He's 4 years old, and so he's obviously getting these influences from somewhere, and it's not an anxiety for him yet, it's an excitement. It's something where he feels good about doing something good, but I could see the anxiety being maybe an issue over time. But he's really, it's lovely to watch him like that. And in my friends group, I've seen different influences as well. So you've probably seen the Seaspiracy and those type of kind of Netflix content that, whether it's right or wrong or whatever, the opinion is about that, it generated so much discussion in my friends group. So my age group, kind of, 40-year-old. That was a really interesting moment for me. And people made life decisions after watching those type of things. I know people in my friends group that decided to stop eating meat for example, and change their habits as a result of watching that kind of content. So it's interesting, isn't it, to think about the influences and how powerful they can be at the moment.
Absolutely. There's a program, a documentary that was on Netflix called Minimalists, which I sat and watched, and actually it was kind of the last sentence that kind of summed it up, and actually sums up kind of quite a lot of our problems. And ultimately it was around, if you're going to buy something, make sure it has a use. So don't just buy things now for just sake of buying it. And ultimately, without sounding too much, because I'm not going to lie, I'm part of the problem. I've had to make decisions of myself, and change some of those things. But ultimately, part of the problem is that we just consume so much. So the issues around plastic and plastic waste, that's around overconsumption. Palm oil, major issue. But actually, palm oil, we've killed the golden goose. It actually is a product that doesn't need that much space and is really high yielding. But the problem is we just consume so much of it, and it's that overconsumption, and we can do it. But you can do it on everything. So major issues in Vietnam is caused by coffee, because of that desire for instant coffee, and chocolate. Look into chocolate as well, and it's all of these things kind of add up. It's just consumption and us not also having the facilities to deal with the things as well. So, but yeah, it's.
So how can we relate that to the technology industry then, Dan? So one of our inspirations for having a climate initiative was Microsoft and their carbon negative by 2030, and also promising to remove historical emissions by 2050. So you've got big tech companies now making big claims, but also the technology industry is a driver of, you need the latest thing, right? And some of that consumerism that you're talking about. So how do you think about the tech industry and their role to play in the climate crisis?
Well, I think the tech industry can actually make a real difference, I believe. So there is some big companies who, yes, they are bringing out the latest thing and there's this drive for the latest thing, but actually is this it's an idealistic view, is the time frame, when it needs to be. I'm aware they need to make money, but generally what they can look at is the materials. They could look at their power usage. They can look at every aspect of that production. So think about the end goal, where does this product, or where does this, from that aspect, so say it was a product, where does that end up? What happens at its end of life? So build that in at the beginning, and I think it's for companies who, we've changed the servers that our website sits on, all of those kind of things. We've changed the energy with it that comes in to power that. So it's looking at all of these different things that technology can do. But I also think that technology can play a really important part in conservation as well, with regards to the monitoring of projects and the understanding of projects and the impacts of projects. So I'm not going to sit here and say anybody's bad or anybody's great. It's kind of like, actually, we've all got a part to play. So the technology industry can help in some ways, but it also can make improvements in others, And then for us personally, it's like, I bought a phone and I look at the next phone and go, God, that looks quite good. It's got a better camera on it. And then I sit and go, do I really need that camera? Because the one I've got actually is really, really good. So I think it's basically everybody needs to really kind of think about it. I know that sounds really idealistic, and I'm probably not this idealistic person, but ultimately I think we just all have a part to play. And we can all make that change. And going back to what your mum says, one person can make a difference, but two people can have an even bigger impact. But collectively, everybody can have a huge impact. And technology, if it comes together, continues with the research that it's doing, could make a huge change to some of the decisions and some of the things that are happening out there. And I don't know whether that really answers the question, because I don't have a definitive answer on that. Because I could sit here and I could sound like I'm bad-mouthing the technology industry, which I wouldn't. I couldn't do that, because actually I can see so many good things that the technology industry does. So
it doesn't sound like that at all. I think there are some fantastic projects that utilise cloud technology, and just on a more basic level, the impact it's had on all of our travel.
Yeah.
Think about during lockdown, this move to hybrid working that lots of organisations are talking about. We, as a business, used to send somebody in their car to go and visit our customers to deliver all of our work. Now it's all delivered remotely.
Yeah, well, if it hadn't
so
been...
the carbon, footprint is way lower.
Yeah, so ultimately, if Microsoft hadn't set up Microsoft Teams in the way it's set up, we as an organisation would have had huge trouble because we weren't remotely set up to work out of the office. So when lockdown happened, we had to really change really quickly. And we had to implement. We started using it. 365. We started using it properly, and we started using it, and we're all now sat all over the country. It's enabled me to have conversations and raise funds, but it's enabled us to do that without that travel. It's enabled us to have those conversations with our partners much more easily whilst that's been happening. Yes, at time we're going to need to travel to those places, and yes, it's great to sit down and have the conversation with people, but ultimately in the last 18 months we'd have been screwed without it. Simple as. So, and most of our funds actually comes through technology. It comes through the website. That's the way it arrives to us. So certainly not critical. I think we just need to look at how we use it, how we can benefit from it. But, and then when with technology or products, like I say, we just need to build in from the very beginning what happens at the end. And once we know that, then
Sean, do you think we can use... Sean, do you think we can use "We'd have been screwed without it" on any of our team's marketing?
I'm still trying to get the two 12-year-old chins into our marketing. That's what
I think I said 12, didn't I?
Get in. But do you know, it reminded me, one of the other things we learned from you, Dan, as we've been going through this partnership, was around, you kind of saying to us, look, we're not saying don't travel at all. And, I think you were talking about planes and Mark going to Dubai. It wasn't about, if there was essential business travel, then it's not saying you can't do any more travel, but it was the right way to balance that. And you showed us, for example, that tool where you could equate Mark's travel to Dubai to a carbon footprint cost, and then donating that cost back to the Woodland Trust. I can't remember what it worked out as.
So it worked out at around about, for a return trip to Dubai, is around about £25. So if you think about that in the cost of your flight, actually for anybody, that's not a huge amount in the overall cost. But yeah, what we just ask people to do is, so if, for example, if a business was offsetting, we'd ask them to measure, then we'd ask them to reduce, and then we'd ask them to offset the residual, the unavoidables. So in the same with anybody. So if you're traveling, so we're not saying don't travel. What we're saying is think about, do you need to travel? And if there is a reason why you need to travel and you need to go somewhere, then do it, but try and do it in the most responsible way. And if you need to take a flight, but if there's no, so in Mark's case, he had to go, had to be there, had to be in Dubai. So we'd be naive to think that anything other than that's going to happen, and that is going to actually happen, and travel's going to happen, is, well, that's the kind of thing you can offset. What we want to avoid is, the 15 people taking flights in private jets every other week, just to go off to somewhere. Well, actually, that's avoidable. That doesn't really need to happen in most cases. But in Mark's case, he needed to be in Dubai. So you need to go to Dubai. But if you want to lessen the impact of that, then you can offset it through the Woodland Trust. There is a carbon calculator on there where you can offset your flights, your car journeys, your working from home, your utility bills, those kind of things. So you can offset those. But yeah, intrinsically, the cost isn't as high as you may think it is.
No, I mean, I think it's a good policy for businesses to bake in, is to make sure we're incorporating that into the way that we think about travel and how we reflect the impact we have on the environment if travel is necessary, and we do that. It's a really simple thing to do on your website.
And Sean, our customers, I don't think, are really asking you or our sales team about going on site very much anymore, are they? So there's been a mass education of the market that you don't need someone to drive 200 miles to visit you face to face to deliver a training course anymore.
No,
is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So in every sector that we're operating in, nobody wants me anywhere near them, I think, is the first observation. I think that was unrelated to COVID. But certainly, the way that people are hoping we interact with them now is done virtually, and that's because they expect their workforce to be dispersed, because people are wanting now to have that flexible balance of working from different locations, not always at home, sometimes in the office for a purpose, sometimes from home. I think Satya terms it the the hybrid work paradox, because you have such a mixture of different wants and needs all wrapped up in here. Some people want to be in the office for focused work. Some people want to be at home for focused work, depending on their setup and everything else. But what I think we're not going to see is everybody back in the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and that be the default. I don't think that's going to be the option anymore. So the expectation from us as a company is that customers want us to provide services virtually that then are accessible to all of their workforce.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are getting close to being out of time, I'm afraid. Dan, I wondered if we could just ask you to maybe give one more example of one of the projects that you've done. So I follow you on LinkedIn, and there's lots about land purchase and there's lots about tree planting, but there's also quite a lot about species.
Yep.
And some of the projects that you've done that have enabled you to protect animals, which I find fascinating. And again, going into this sort of partnership, didn't know really that was going to be one of the things we were supporting. So could you maybe give people a couple of examples of projects that they could donate to or get involved with supporting?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to give a little plug for a project we've got going on, and it might be something, Sean, for your son's school or whatever to look at. So we've got a project we're doing with Steve Backshall called Operation Ocelot. And this is about protecting a landscape in Guatemala. As you would expect, there are ocelots there, but it's also home to jaguar and manatee. But this is a landscape that kind of covers 6 habitats, going from mountaintop all the way down to seagrass. So it goes all the way down to the lagoon. So, this is a landscape which is incredible, but it's got local people, local communities living there as well who are benefiting from this project and this landscape. That for us is a really big project. So all schools need to do is go onto the website. They can go on there. There's lots of materials for them, but what they can do is they can measure their school grounds. It could be a football pitch. They can measure it, stick that into a calculator, and what that will do is tell them how much it would cost to purchase an area in Guatemala of exactly the same size. So then what they can do is they can stand at their football pitch and go, we've saved an area of forest this big. So that's one thing that we're doing, which the species, my God, just kind of we can go on. Like I said, there's jaguar, manatee, ocelot. This is a landscape that's used by hundreds of species of migrating bird. It's just incredible. It's crocodiles a lot. It's a really, really incredible landscape. And then, we've got projects in the mountains, the Caucasian mountains in Armenia, where we're protecting the Caucasian leopard, where I think there's less than 1,500 of them in the world. One hadn't been seen in this landscape for about 15 years, and now we've got it on camera trap regularly.
Wow.
We know there's more than one because one of the first ones we captured on camera trap only had 3 legs, and we now know there are more by their spots, but also there's 4-legged ones wandering around. So, this is an incredible animal that but it needs huge landscapes and huge areas and territories to survive in. Borneo, orangutans, we just done the project for that where we set out to raise 150,000, but the public just were incredible, and we raised 460,000 in the end, which meant that instead of purchasing 2 lots, we could purchase 5 lots. And what this was going to do is join one protected area on one side of the river to the other, which then creates a corridor for elephants to pass through, orangutans, so they don't end up in these kind of isolated gene pools, proboscis monkeys. I think it's 6 species of hornbill in this area. It's just incredible. I'd sit here.
That's brilliant.
I sit here every week, and we're still finding new species in some of our projects. Last year we found a new mammal. There's new butterflies that we know of. There's new salamander. There's new trees, new plants. One of them was 60 species of orchid have been found, and it's because it's under protection. If we don't, we would never have known they were there. They would be gone. And that for me, that's that gives me the buzz.
Great. And Dan, both individuals or businesses can choose to target their funds towards a specific project if they want to. So if they're listening to this and thinking, I would love to support that particular project, that is possible, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They can get in touch with you and do it on the website.
Absolutely. So we have one project, or we have one appeal, which is called the Action Fund, which is funds that we collect and people donate too, which allows us to kind of disperse that to whichever important urgent project happening at that time or an opportunity comes up. But all of our projects in all of our countries, people can support. So for example, if they were a business that had a link with, I don't know, Kenya, we have Kenyan projects. The one thing that we guarantee is that wherever you want your funds to go, that's where it goes. So if you say, I want my funds to go to Brazil, it's going to Brazil. We're not going to come back to you and go, do you think we could spend it in Colombia? He said, no, it's going to go to Brazil. So we make sure that that's the thing that we will get. There's none of that small print. It's where you want your funds to be and the project you want to support. Because it might be you have a passion for orangutans. We would direct your funds to Borneo. But what we can do is we can work with any company, an individual, and we can work out a mechanism like we have done with you to make it work for your business as well. So
yeah, that's great. So I think both Sean and I have really enjoyed building this partnership, and stating the obvious, would absolutely recommend any businesses out there who maybe haven't done anything like this before to contact Dan or to get in touch with the Woodland Trust to see how they could get involved. Dan, do you want to give us the website or the best place for people to get in contact with you after listening to this?
Yeah, so the website is just woodlandtrust.org. So you can find us on there. We're all over social as well. But if somebody wanted to speak to us, whether they're a business, you can go to the website, or you can drop us a line at corporate@woodlandtrust.org. And we would be happy to have a conversation with anybody and talk to anybody who was interested in supporting what we do.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks for your partnership and for today. And I'm going to go and look up an ocelot now and find out what that is, and then recommend that program to my son's school. But I have no idea Mark, do you know what an ocelot is?
Vaguely, yeah. I probably couldn't pick one out of a lineup.
So, one of the reasons why people, and certainly kids, are finding it is because apparently it's one of the animals you get in Minecraft. Because I said to my son...
Is that right?
Yeah, I said to my son, do you know what an ocelot is? Yeah, of course I do. And he turned his laptop round and there was like an ocelot, a square ocelot on screen. So yeah. So if your son is at the age of playing Minecraft, which I think is 4, probably not, but if he is, then he'll probably be able to tell you what an ocelot is straight away. I'm not going to tell you.
I'll go and test him now.
I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you work it out.
Well, we've got a few Photoshop wizards in Hable, and I'm already picturing Sean meets Ocelot Photoshop.
Well, Sean's already dressed up as a tree for the cause, hasn't he? So maybe Mark as an ocelot.
Sean as a tree and me as an ocelot. Yeah. I'll sign up for that. If it gets the Woodland Trust a few more quid, then...
There's a commitment there, Mark. There's a commitment there, Dan, that you've just had.
I know, absolutely. If that goes on social, I'm all over it. We were all over that.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dan, particularly as we failed with the technology while I was in Dubai. So really appreciate you giving up time to talk to us.
No problem.
And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to this episode. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Hable Talks.